The Sun Devils graded out really well in their win over UCF, and a lot of it has to do with coaching and with the play of Sam Leavitt.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your shows. Stay in touch by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can start the season big with a big return on FanDuel. New customers place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. Today, we are grading the Sun Devils in their win over UCF. It's been a minute since we have done a grading episode, so here's a fresh reminder. These are typical school grades, 0 to 100, A, B, C, D, and F is our grading scale. We were going to break down each position on the offense, all three levels of the defense, and then Kenny Dillingham, offensive coordinator Marcus Arroyo, and defensive coordinator Brian Ward. And for fun, we just kind of take a look at the averages and everything. So let's go ahead and start at quarterback with Sam Leavitt. And this is pretty easy to me. I'm giving Sam a firm A. I'm going 94 out of 100 here. And I will tell you that Sam Leavitt had the best day of anybody else on this list. He is tied with a couple others that we will talk about later. But Sam Leavitt, terrific day. 16 of 25, 161 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He was sacked 2 times, but he ended up delivering 22 rushing yards on the ground on 11 carries. Obviously, you take away the negative yardage from the sacks, and he's closer to probably around 35-ish, I would imagine. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know what the sack yards were, but he had a pretty good day. Now, the thing that was really frustrating about Leavitt is he got to a point where the pressure was getting there so often that it felt like he was getting spooked in the pocket a little bit. Kenny Dillingham himself said post-game that sometimes Sam was seeing ghosts and feeling as though he needed to take off and make a play, even if the pocket hadn't completely collapsed on him or even if he had a clean pocket. That's something that, was going to be worked on. And we've definitely seen the progression, but this was a game where I'm curious how much cleaner he could have played if he wasn't seeing things that weren't there. But that also falls on the offensive line, who, of course, we're going to talk about a little later on in the show because it's an interesting group. It's not a horrible group. It's an interesting group. But Sam played a very good game and completing 64% of his passes, 3 touchdowns. He could have had a lot more than 161 passing yards, by the way. There was a big, probably about a 30-yard completion that Jordan Tyson dropped on the left sideline. And then there was, on the right sideline, very next play, another big completion that would have gone to Jake Smith if he had caught it. And there's a very good chance that had he caught it, he would have been able to shake the defender who was already falling down in the process of trying to tackle Jake Smith. There's a chance he could have shook him and then taken it to the house for what would have been in total like a 70-yard touchdown, maybe a little more than that. Leavitt was throwing it from the end zone. So a lot of yards that were left off the table. That's another potential touchdown right there. It was a stellar performance with numbers that were left off the board with no fault to Sam Leavitt. So, yeah, 94 out of 100. I feel very, very good giving him the best grade of anybody on this team. Running back, here's a surprise. It's a little lower than what we're used to, but that's because Cam Skattebo wasn't on the field. Nonetheless, I gave him a B-. I went 82 out of 100. And this is obviously based on the performance of Kyson Brown more than it is anyone else. DeCarlos Brooks, 3 carries, 4 yards. That was it. 4 touches from the remainder of the running backs. Otherwise, it was the Kyson Brown show. 18 carries, 73 rushing yards, no touchdowns, a long of 14. He also caught 3 passes and turned it into 21 yards. That seems pretty good to me. Taking a run. When you remember that Skattebo's not on the field, Cam Skattebo, who has a legitimate case for winning the Heisman Trophy this year, unfortunately, you can probably throw that out of the window with missing a football game, and we'll see how he looks the remainder of the year as he comes back from that undisclosed injury. It's going to be a drop-off, but Kyson did an awesome job. And this is a game that I said was a really good opportunity for Kyson to advertise himself as the future of the backfield and as running back one for the Sun Devils in 2025 and potentially beyond, however long he wants to stay here at Arizona State. I feel pretty good about that performance. It wasn't like a Cam Skattebo performance, but you can't really expect that out of anybody right now, especially a player who's a true sophomore and just had his first career start. Yeah, Kyson is not going to be at that Cam Skattebo level. Can he? Who knows? But this was a very good advertisement for him. Definitely a B- for me. Wide receiver, I'm going an A-, 91 out of 100, and it would have been a lot higher if you had had those completions to Tyson and to Jake Smith, which would have easily propelled this team over the 200 passing yard mark. That took a bit of a hit. This is very similar to the Kyson Brown situation in that a lot of this grade falls on Jordan Tyson. The rest of the receivers, 1 catch, 12 yards from Melkon Stovall, 1 catch, 10 yards from Jake Smith, and 1 catch, 9 yards for Xavier Guillory. The distribution of the football just hasn't been there this year. It's really been Jordan Tyson's offense, I suppose. He is the go-to guy in the passing game, and he's been very good. He had that drop down the sidelines, which was very frustrating, but then later on, he made an outstanding catch down the sidelines. He is able to high point the football, and then with the body control he has, he's able to simultaneously, while he's doing this, like the quickness of it in real life, and then you slow it down and you're like, that's insane, is he's able to immediately bring the ball to his chest, put his arm underneath it to trap it against his body, and as he's falling down, he's able to turn himself, fall onto the turf, but the ball is strapped securely between his chest and his arms. So yeah, that thing's not moving. There was no question as to whether or not he caught that football. The quickness that was going through his head to be able to maintain possession of that football, phenomenal. It was terrific. He ends the day 7 catches, 99 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a beautiful touchdown catch in the back of the end zone from Sam Leavitt. Just nothing special, just a little fade route. And Leavitt just, oh my goodness, it was a perfect throw. And it was one of those, my guy's getting it or nobody's getting it. And he just hits Tyson perfectly in stride. Beautiful touchdown. And then the go-ahead touchdown. Another great pass for Leavitt to put the ball inside. And that's where Tyson was working the leverage, was inside. He's able to corral this ball in a bit of traffic, come down with it, and have the go-ahead score. He was terrific. His connection with Sam Leavitt has been terrific all year. This is definitely an A- grade for me, 91 out of 100. Tight end, B+, and I'm giving him an 87 out of 100. As per usual, we didn't really see anything from anyone else. It was just Shimon Nater, who on the surface didn't have this crazy day. 3 catches, 10 yards, and a touchdown. For what it's worth, it was the first touchdown reception of the game for the Sun Devils. He was wide open for 3 or 4 seconds of game time. And just trying to say, like, hey, Sam, I'm right here. Throw me the ball. Here's 6 points for you. And Sam rolls out and he goes, hey, Shimon's open. Hit Shimon perfectly. And ASU was able to get onto the board on offense. Shimon's a stud. And I've been calling all year for him to get more touches and opportunities. And this game was exactly that. The previous week against Oklahoma State, he had, I believe it was 5 catches for 50 yards. I'm going to pull that up right now. 5 catches, 53 yards. They are getting him more involved, and I've been begging for him to get more involved with this offense because he is a very talented player and creates mismatches. This game showed that to you in the red zone. And that's where he has his most value. As they continue to develop this offense over the last 3 weeks of the season, my hope is that the tight end, particularly Shimon Mateer, continues to get his own equal opportunities and turn it into big plays like this. Shimon Mateer is a stud. Love that ASU is starting to get him involved. B+, 87 out of 100. Offensive line, the last position group we're going to talk about before we transition to the defense. They're fine. I thought they played fine. They didn't dominate the line of scrimmage in the run game. ASU was under 4 yards per carry. Technically, they were barely above 3. But again, they gave up 2 sacks for negative yardage. That hurts Sam Leavitt's overall yards per carry. But you gave up 2 sacks. So sure, maybe the rushing yards don't look as nice and they look better if you get the sack yardage back. But then if you go NFL level, that counts for your net passing yards. So and you didn't have a lot of passing yards, 161. So no matter how you want to look at this, it was an underwhelming day for the offensive line, which I gave them an 81 out of 100 and a B- for this grade. And I was a little bit higher on them. I still have to give them credit and understanding that this was not a group they were used to preparing for with Cam Skattebo out of the equation. Goodness. Skattebo is really able to mask up some of the weaknesses and the flaws of the offensive line because he's just a creator. The moment the ball's in his hands, anything can happen. We've seen that on a week-to-week basis. That was no different in any game we've seen this year, and it was different in this game when he wasn't on the field. So when the offensive line was struggling in the run game, we saw it. We saw that they were struggling. The tackles have just got to get better, man. There were false starts. There was a lot of blown coverages, and Leavitt was under pressure, which turned into him seeing ghosts and everything. And that is on Leavitt for sure. He's got to get more comfortable in the pocket, but part of getting comfortable in the pocket, as I've said all year long, is being able to give a redshirt freshman proper protection. It hasn't been there this year. ASU needs to get better at offensive tackle. They're going to be going through a huge makeover this offseason with a handful of guys no longer having any eligibility, both inside and outside. So it'll be interesting to see these final 3 weeks of the regular season, and then whatever happens in the postseason to see how the offensive line is able to close out the year on what I'd say has been pretty average. I wouldn't say it was a horrific year for the offensive line. I would not call it an elite year. I think it's been an average year, which is why I give them an average grade, a little on the higher side, but 81 out of 100. Let's go ahead and flip to the defensive side of the football. Take a look at the 3 levels. That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Sun Devils fans, listen up. You need to download the Roy app. You've heard us talk about it before. Roy, they are revolutionizing the NIL industry. Roy allows you, the fan, to have a say in who gets the NIL money. And here's what I absolutely love about Roy is you get your money back if that player decides to transfer. It's also really good at helping keep the team intact and great for the game in the long term. My Roy player of the week, let me tell you, there's a lot of good options. I'm going to go with Jordan Tyson with his 2 touchdowns. You can show support for Jordan Tyson by depositing a little appreciation into that player's account. Just download the Roy app and you can see what the logo looks like if you're watching on YouTube, or join roy.com. Giving the flowers here to Jordan Tyson. 2 touchdowns, the go-ahead touchdown, and has just been the best friend of Sam Leavitt all year long. I'm personally going to go ahead and give him a little bit of my cash with my Roy account. Every contribution counts. If it's $10, $20, it's all going to add up for your favorite players to stay where they are. So join me in giving and showing some love for Jordan Tyson. Download the Roy app or go to roy.com today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDON. Every athlete from every team is there. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Just go to joinroy.com for full terms. Roy, supporting the players, change the game. Wherever you're getting your shows, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and you will get that update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in to make us your first listen of the day. Of course, a special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let's talk about defense. We got 3 levels: defensive line, linebacker, and the secondary. And this was a okay day for the defense. I think the box score was more unforgiving than what you saw on the field. But with that being said, this was not their strongest performance. 31 points allowed to UCF. That was much, much higher than what we're accustomed to seeing from ASU this year, more often than not, when it comes to the defensive side of the football. We've seen a lot of games that are held under 30 points, games that are held under 25 points. So when you gave up 35 to UCF, that raised some, or 31, to UCF, that raised some eyebrows. The thing that concerned me was a redshirt freshman quarterback in Dillingham was making his first career start. He looked pretty comfortable. He was sacked 3 times. There wasn't much in the run game for him. He does have that ability to make plays as a runner with his legs. We didn't see him as a dual threat in this game, but we saw him break out of the pocket more than a few times, and he beat ASU because of it. They also had a really good game script for him, where it was hand the ball off to RJ Harvey, who went for 127 yards and 3 touchdowns, and just take the underneath easy completions. And he was hitting the outside on the corners, having no problems. With that being said, let's start with the defensive line. I'm giving them a flat B. I'm giving them an 85 out of 100 here. Now, the only thing that saved the defensive line was the sacks, and ASU was able to record 3 sacks in this game. They had 4 tackles for loss, and they absolutely clamped RJ Harvey in the first half of the game. He was under 3 yards per carry. ASU's defensive line was doing everything they needed to do to win this football game. But then the second half rolled around, and all of a sudden RJ Harvey goes from averaging 3 yards per carry to what felt like a first down on every carry. And he crushed you. He had a hat trick. He had one of the best rushing performances of any running back that you have faced this year. And you have faced some good running backs. Devin Neal, Taj Brooks, the kid from Cincinnati, who, of course, I can't remember his name. Apologies. RJ Harvey, probably the best running back you faced this year, and you could tell. But again, they did have 3 sacks, which were all very crucial to helping win this game. They clamped down when they needed to, and their performance in the first half also really helps. 85 out of 100. I do not feel bad for making it a solid B. I'm sure some people could say it was lower because the numbers in the ground game were so good, but at the end of the day, outside of RJ Harvey, everyone else was fine. 85 out of 100. Linebackers, I'm going on the higher side here. I'm giving them a B+, and I am giving them a flat, well, not a flat, 87 out of 100. 87 out of 100. They did really good in the box score. Your leading tackler was not Miles Rouser this week. In fact, it wasn't even one of the safeties, who we see the 3 safeties are typically the top 3 or top 4 tacklers on this team. That wasn't the case because Jordan Crook led the team in tackles. 9 total, 4 solo, 5 assisted. Crook was able to step up with Keyshawn Elliott sidelined due to injury. That was another thing that really impressed me about the linebackers this week is you were missing Keyshawn Elliott, the best linebacker on this team, one of the best defensive players on this team. You were missing him in a week where you were going up against RJ Harvey. And that was obviously a huge, huge deal for ASU to not have Keyshawn Elliott on this defense. So you needed the younger guys to step up, and they did. Jordan Crook, 9 tackles. Caleb McCullough, someone that I highlighted going into the game as someone that we needed to pay attention to and watch very carefully to see how he was able to perform. he performed good. 8 tackles, 2 solo, 6 assisted. McCullough has definitely just been one of those guys to step up this year in that next man up mentality. He had the role as the number 1 linebacker this week. I thought he played very, very well. Those two alone really helped themselves. But then you had Martell Hughes, true freshman linebacker, 2 tackles, 2 solo. Richie, that's not a big deal. Oh, well, then you must have missed Martell Hughes on special teams, where he was able to get right to the punter because for some reason UCF did not put any punt coverage against Martell Hughes. And number 18 runs into the backfield and crushes the opportunity to punt this ball away. If you're watching this game, you had 2 thoughts in your head. The first thought was, wow, that's a great block punt. The second thought was, that's roughing the punter, and that's a free 15 yards and a first down. Thankfully, it ended up being a blocked punt, and it looked a lot worse where I was watching it from the press box. It was very clearly just a really good blocked punt, and then safety Montana Warren scoops it up and scores a touchdown. So massive play from Martell Hughes. I understand that's not on defense, but you can't not mention it. Finally, going to the secondary. By the way, that was an 87 out of 100 for the linebackers. Secondary, I'm going to B- here. We're going to go 82 out of 100. The Montana Warren play definitely has some weight to it, for sure. Overall, I felt the secondary struggled in this game. You had a redshirt freshman quarterback in Dylan Risk, who went 24 of 34, 229 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. All of their touchdowns came on the ground. RJ Harvey had 3, and their backup quarterback, Ja'Cory Brown, who's one of their go-to runners, had to score 2. So Dylan Risk, by all means, didn't have this like elite passing game. In fact, 229 yards on 34 attempts, that's still pretty good. 6.7. At one point in time, he was under like 5. He might have been under 4 at one point in time because they were just checking down everything underneath, but it was working. And ASU just didn't have an answer for it. And they were doing a really good job attacking the far sidelines with just quick little throws. And Javen Robinson and Keith Abney were playing a little too far off. And I was wondering why ASU was refusing to punch these guys off the line of scrimmage with press or even line up 3 yards off instead of the 5-yard cushion that they were giving him, because it was easy completions for Risk to get into a rhythm. It was working. Now, they did find a way to keep Risk out of the end zone and to hold out their top receivers, Kobe Hudson and Jacoby Jones, out of the end zone. That's all well and good. The best part of this game was LT Welch had a pick 6. The play that set it up, absolutely insane. One of the biggest special teams blunders I've ever seen in my life that UCF decided to commit for some reason. Put them at the half-yard line, and Dylan Risk throws this ball on some kind of slant. I don't know how deep the slant was supposed to be. It felt like it was pretty deep, and then LT just undercuts his football and takes it to the house. They credit him 9 yards on the interception return. It felt like a lot less than that because it felt like he took like 5 steps and he was already in pay dirt. So that play, in my opinion, very much helped the secondary's performance. It's not that they were terrible, but there was a lot more that they could have done to be better in this game against a redshirt freshman quarterback. 82 out of 100 here. All right. It's time to talk about the coaches now. Kenny Dillingham, Marcus Arroyo, and Brian Ward. How did they grade out? That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Let me talk to you guys about our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and get ready to tackle more NFL action. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. And that can be on anything. It can be a money line. It can be a player prop, a spread, whatever. Just bet the $5, have it win, and you get $150 in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app It's going to give you everything you need to place those live bets all in one place, because when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out live stats. You can check out a live play-by-play and so much more in the same place where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. One last time, wherever you're getting your shows, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. You will get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate all of you for tuning in to make us your first listen of the day. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let's wrap this bad boy up with the coaches, starting with Kenny Dillingham. A-. This is a 90 out of 100 for me. This was not a perfectly coached game. This is a game that I felt was much better for the vibes of the team and for the energy that the Sun Devils had than it was some kind of elite game plan, because ASU did get rolled for 31 points and over 400 yards of total offense, 4 touchdowns on the ground. It wasn't this elite game by any stretch of the imagination. But the thing that I did appreciate was Kenny was able to keep his guys cool, calm, collective. At no point did this ASU team look panicked. They definitely seemed like they were working to get things figured out, which is not a bad thing at all, because the worst thing that could have happened here for ASU was to get into a panic mode and lose the game. We saw that against Texas Tech. We saw it against Cincinnati, where they just lost their composure and they weren't able to finish. That wasn't the case against UCF, where they trailed several times in this game. Instead, ASU just found ways to respond. They found plays on special teams. They found plays on defense. They found plays through the air. ASU just responded very well, and it's a lot of credit that needs to be given to Kenny Dillingham for this. He's got the guys settled in at this point in time. I'm giving him a 90 out of 100. I wouldn't mind going up a few more points. I could justify 93 out of 100. We are going to stick with a 90, though. Marcus Arroyo, I'm giving him a flat A, 94 out of 100. When you're able to create an offensive game plan without your best offensive weapon and turn it into 21 points, I'm pretty happy with that. This was a huge blow to the Sun Devils. Cam Skattebo is one of the best running backs in the nation. He's certainly one of the 2 best running backs in the Big 12. I don't know who I'd put ahead of him, because RJ Harvey's elite. Look at the difference from ASU when Cam Skattebo is off the field. But the good news is Sam Leavitt was just totally dialed in. And Kenny Dillingham deserves credit for that as well. Kenny's very hands-on with the offense. He's been very hands-on with Sam Leavitt. But Marcus Arroyo, who's also in the quarterback's ear and part of it being that quarterback whisperer for this redshirt freshman, he's one of the biggest reasons that they've been able to get on track as well. And one of the biggest reasons that Sam has seen so much success, especially as the season has progressed. They did an awesome job, and they incorporated plenty of guys. They had 6 different guys catch the football, 2 different running backs. Of course, it was definitely skewed towards specific players. Like Kyson Brown ends up having 21 touches, 18 carries, 3 receptions. Jordan Tyson, 7 receptions. Shimon Mateer, 3 receptions. It's not like you go into this game and, like UCF, an example, their passing game. Randy Pittman Jr., 4 catches. Kobe Hudson, 7 catches. Jacoby Jones, 7 catches. Jared Baker, 2 catches. RJ Harvey, 2 catches, and a couple other guys who had single catches. They distributed the ball much better. But this is a good game plan for a quarterback that is usually really reliant on having an elite running back in the backfield. And instead, they were able to turn him into a passer, somebody that is able to beat you with his arm, not just because he's got an elite running back in the backfield. Sam Leavitt, the difference from week 1 to where we're at now, drastic. He is a completely different quarterback. And Arroyo deserves a lot of the credit for that, and he deserves a lot of the credit for the offense's success in this week. 94 out of 100. Brian Ward, I'm going to give him an A- here, which feels surprising considering how high I am on Brian Ward, but this was not an elite game by him. But typical of Brian Ward, we saw really good pivots and adjustments that were made throughout the game. And then halftime was really weird. Like, you had good adjustments to start taking advantage of Dylan Risk, but then you started getting exposed on the ground. Like, this was not a complete 60 minutes from ASU's defense. It still felt like a good performance. I wasn't mad with the way this game ended for ASU. It just could have been a lot better. And it was a tale of two halves, but it it didn't turn into like this complete game because you were getting beat up through the air in the first half, but you clamped RJ Harvey. Second half, you were able to kind of make Dylan Risk a little more uncomfortable, but then RJ Harvey's going crazy. But then again, it's RJ Harvey, who is, if it's not Cam Skattebo, Harvey is the best running back in the Big 12 this year. There's a reason he's leading the league in rushing yards. It's because he's really freaking good at football. It was never an easy task. This was an okay performance from Brian Ward. The reason I give him the credit here is being able to force UCF to shift their identity. It's just unfortunate that you force them to switch them into RJ Harvey mode. Not the best day for Brian Ward. Certainly could have been a lot worse. And maybe I'm just a Brian Ward fanboy at this point. 93 out of 100. Overall, I switched up a couple of my numbers in the middle of this, so I don't have the correct number for what I decided to do initially. What I do know is based off of the averages, this ended up being a B+ and about an 88% given rounding up. And that's what this game felt like. This felt like a B+ game. The offense really stepped up. The defense, I already said yesterday, this is not a bend but don't break defense. I do not like that at all when describing this defense. The way I describe this defense is they rise to the occasion. And when they need a big play, they make a big play. Not, oh man, they were able to get off the field. That's awesome. No, they got off the field because they got a sack when they needed a sack. They were able to get a pick 6 to help ASU get back into the football game. It's not like, oh, it's 3rd and 15 and the defense only gave up 12 and now they're forcing a punt. That's bend but don't break. That's bend but don't break. This ASU defense is able to deliver big plays when they need it. That's why the defense isn't as low for me. The offense, Arroyo called a great game without Cam Skattebo. They were phenomenal. They aired it out. They still got decent production from the ground game. It's not like it was a horrible performance. It just wasn't what we were used to seeing. And then Kenny, just overall a great game. Overall a great game. These guys did not seem panicked. They seemed cool, calm, collective for a full 60 minutes. 88 to 89 out of 100 as the overall average for this team. That's a grade I give them. Am I spot on? Am I way off one way or the other? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrats36 or the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. You'll get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in to make us your first listen of the day. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. We'll be back again tomorrow as we have a very interesting question to answer, and that is whether or not ASU can make a run to the Big 12 title game. It's not impossible, but they're going to need some help, and we're going to talk about it tomorrow. I'll see you there. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.